The crystal chandelier in the hotel ballroom cast elegant shadows across Sarah's engagement party, illuminating faces I hadn't seen in months. My sister had outdone herself with the venue, the Meridian Grand Hotel's premier event space, with soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. 200 guests mingled beneath strings of fairy lights, champagne glasses clinking as Sarah basked in the attention she'd always craved. I stood near the back in a simple navy dress from Target, watching her work the room in her designer gown. At 29, Sarah had built her life around appearances. Her fiancé, Marcus, came from old money, and she'd spent the last 2 years transforming herself into the perfect society wife. Tonight was her moment to shine, and she wasn't about to let anyone steal her thunder, especially not me, Emma. "Come meet the Worthingtons properly," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the cocktail chatter as she approached with Marcus and his parents. I'd already been introduced briefly during the receiving line, but clearly Sarah wanted to establish the family hierarchy for her future in-laws. Marcus's mother, Patricia, wore pearls that probably cost more than most people's cars, while his father, Judge Worthington, carried himself like a man accustomed to deference. "This is my younger sister," Sarah began, her tone already apologetic. "Emma works in an office downtown." "How lovely," Patricia smiled politely. "What type of work do you do, dear?" Before I could respond, Sarah jumped in. "Meet my sister, the secretary," she announced, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Several heads turned. "Still doing filing," she added with that familiar smirk I'd endured since childhood. The group waited for my response. I could feel the weight of their expectations, the subtle condescension in their polite smiles. Sarah had always been the golden child, homecoming queen, sorority president, marketing executive at a prestigious firm. I was the family afterthought. The one who'd dropped out of college. The one who'd never quite measured up. "Office work, yes," I said quietly, keeping my voice steady. "Honest work," Judge Worthington nodded. "We need people willing to handle the day-to-day operations." "Exactly," Sarah beamed. "Emma is very practical, aren't you, Em?" The word *practical* hung in the air like a dismissal. Sarah's code for *ordinary, unremarkable, settled for less * she'd used it my entire life, and it still stung. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah, maybe we should." "Oh, it's fine," she waved him off. "Emma knows her place in the family. Don't you, Em?" Around us, the party continued. Sarah's friends clustered near the bar, her co-workers gossiped in the corner, and the Worthingtons held court near the appetizer station with inherited confidence. I'd grown up at events like this, always introduced as Sarah's little sister, always relegated to the children's table long past childhood, always expected to be grateful for inclusion. Mom joined us with a wine glass in hand. Sarah got all the personality in the family. "And the ambition," Dad added, approaching with a plate of canapés. "Though Emma is doing fine for herself, steady job, modest department. Nothing wrong with keeping things simple." Their words felt like paper cuts, small, precise, accumulating over decades. Sarah glowed under their praise while I stood reduced to a cautionary tale about settling for less. "What exactly do you do at the office?" Patricia asked, her interest seemingly genuine. "Administrative support," I replied simply. "Filing mostly," Sarah clarified with a laugh. "Some data entry, basic office tasks. Nothing too complicated." The Worthingtons nodded politely, their assessment of me complete. Proof, perhaps, of good genes properly channeled in Sarah, and wasted potential in me. "Well," Judge Worthington said, clearing his throat, "every organization needs reliable support staff." The phrase *support staff* settled over me like a blanket of finality. Not cruel, just perfectly dismissive. Marcus checked his phone, his watch catching the light. "The photographer will want family shots soon." "Perfect timing," Sarah said brightly. "Emma, you'll be in a few photos, won't you? For the album." Her tone suggested she was doing me a favor, allowing the family secretary into the official record of her engagement to high society. "Of course," I smiled. "Wonderful," Patricia clapped. "Marcus, show them those lovely photos from your Harvard reunion." As Marcus scrolled through ivy-covered buildings and accomplished classmates, I felt the familiar sensation of being measured against Sarah and found wanting. It wasn't malicious. My family thought they were helping, managing expectations, keeping me grounded. The photographer arrived and arranged us in configurations. I stood where positioned, smiled when instructed, and tried to look appropriately grateful. Now just the immediate family, the photographer directed. I stepped aside, understanding my place. Sarah would be the radiant center, while I'd appear only in a few wider shots as context. Emma's always been the practical one, Mom explained to Patricia. Never had Sarah's drive for big careers. How wise, Patricia replied. Not everyone can handle executive pressure. Their words drifted over me, until I noticed Marcus's face change. His phone screen lit up his expression with shock. What's wrong, darling? Sarah asked. Marcus stared, then looked at me with confusion. This is going to sound strange, but is this *U* on *times* cover? The question hung in the air like a record scratch. Sarah's smile froze. Mom's wine glass halted. Dad's canapé hovered midair. Guests turned to stare. Marcus held up his phone. *Time* magazine's cover, this week's issue. The silence stretched. That's not possible, Sarah whispered. But Marcus was already scrolling, incredulous. Judge Worthington leaned in. Patricia fumbled for her own phone. The biotechnology breakthrough of the decade, Marcus read aloud. Dr. Emma Richardson, founder and CEO of Richardson Labs, has revolutionized cancer treatment with her groundbreaking immunotherapy research. Dad's canapé dropped. It says you have 3 degrees from MIT, Marcus continued. PhD in molecular biology. Founded your company 5 years ago. Currently valued at $2.8 billion. Mom's wine glass joined Dad's canapé on the floor. The article says you've been working nights and weekends in your lab while maintaining a cover job as administrative support. Marcus looked up. To throw off corporate espionage attempts. Sarah's perfect makeup couldn't hide the color draining from her face. But, you're just a secretary. Yes, I said quietly. That's what I let everyone believe. Phones buzzed across the ballroom. Guests murmured, passing screens, pulling up the same *Time* cover. Oh my God, Patricia whispered. You're Dr. Richardson. Judge Worthington straightened, his tone reverent. We had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said simply. That was the point. Sarah's carefully constructed evening was unraveling. Her engagement party meant to showcase her ascent into high society had become the stage for a revelation that repositioned everyone in the room. But why? Sarah's voice cracked. Why would you let us think? Because it was easier, I said. Corporate espionage is real in biotech. The fewer people who knew, the safer it was. Even family. Whispers spread like wildfire. Emma, Mom said softly, almost pleading. Honey, we didn't know. I know, I answered gently. You weren't supposed to. Dad squinted at his phone. It says your company just went public. The IPO raised $3.2 billion. Last week, I confirmed. You've been a billionaire for a week and didn't tell us. Sarah demanded. I've been a billionaire on paper for 3 years, I corrected. The IPO just made it official. The photographer abandoned subtlety, snapping away. Guests drifted closer, drawn by the commotion. There's a whole profile in Forbes, Marcus said, scrolling rapidly. 6 months ago. The mystery CEO revolutionizing cancer treatment. It has your picture. We never read Forbes, Mom murmured. Apparently we should have, Dad muttered. Sarah stood frozen, her perfect party derailed. The sister she dismissed as ordinary was now the most powerful person in the room. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The article says your lab's treatments could save millions of lives, Patricia read, her voice full of awe. We're still in clinical trials, I said modestly. But the early results are extraordinary, Judge Worthington added. 93% remission rates in stage 4 patients. The room fell quieter as the reality settled. The practical sister, the secretary, the afterthought, was about to change the world. Conversations had shifted from wedding planning and office gossip to hushed discussions about the *Time* magazine cover now trending on social media. How long? Sarah asked quietly. How long have you been working on this? 8 years, I replied. Since I left college. You didn't drop out, Dad said slowly, realization dawning. You transferred to MIT's accelerated PhD program. I nodded. Full scholarship. I graduated at 23. Mom sank into a nearby chair. 8 years. You've been working on cancer research for 8 years, and we thought. You thought I'd given up. I finished softly. I know. The weight of 8 years of family dinners settled over the group. 8 years of being introduced as the family disappointment. 8 years of gentle suggestions to be more ambitious. 8 years of comparisons to Sarah's conventional success. Marcus was still scrolling, his fascination growing with each article. It says you've published over 40 papers in peer-reviewed journals. You hold 17 patents. The FDA fast-tracked your treatment because the results were so promising. 41 papers, I corrected automatically. And 19 patents as of last month. Sarah's designer gown suddenly felt less impressive in a room where her sister had just been revealed as one of the world's leading cancer researchers. The chandelier that had seemed so elegant an hour ago now illuminated a gathering where the so-called secretary was actually the most accomplished guest in the room. The White House called this morning, I added quietly. The president wants to discuss expanding federal funding for cancer research. Apparently, our results have caught some attention. Patricia nearly dropped her phone. The president. It's scheduled for Thursday, I said simply. Judge Worthington, a man who had spent his life commanding authority, suddenly looked uncertain. Dr. Richardson, we owe you an apology. No apology needed, I said. You responded to the information you had. But Sarah wasn't ready to let it go. 8 years, Emma. 8 years of letting us believe you were a failure. I suggested gently. Her silence was answer enough. Around us, the party had transformed. Guests who had barely acknowledged me in the receiving line were now positioning themselves for introductions. Worthington family friends who had dismissed me an hour earlier were suddenly very eager for conversation. Dr. Richardson, one of Judge Worthington's colleagues, approached hesitantly. I don't suppose you're accepting new patients for your clinical trials. The question hung in the air, underscoring the dramatic shift. The woman they had written off as ordinary was now being approached for life-saving intervention. We have a waiting list, I said diplomatically. Of course, he murmured, embarrassed by his presumption. Sarah's perfect evening had become something else entirely. Her engagement party was now overshadowed by the revelation that her family's supposed underachiever was, in fact, an internationally recognized scientist whose work would save millions. The photographer had been discreetly documenting the entire exchange, recognizing the moment was more newsworthy than a standard engagement party. A family discovering their daughter's true identity, that was the kind of story magazines paid dearly for. I should probably leave, I said quietly to Sarah. This is your night. No, she began quickly, then faltered. I don't know what I mean. The honest confusion in her voice was more vulnerable than any of her usual confidence. For the first time in our lives, Sarah didn't know how to position herself in relation to me. The Time article mentions you're planning to expand internationally, Marcus said, still scrolling. Opening research facilities in 12 countries. 15, actually, I corrected. We finalized agreements with 3 more governments yesterday. Patricia laughed nervously. And here we were worried about your career prospects. The understatement of the century lingered under the chandelier, in a room full of people who had spent the evening making assumptions about a woman whose real life made their accomplishments look quaint. Sarah's engagement party would be remembered, but not for the reasons she intended. Instead of celebrating her rise into high society, it became the night her family discovered that their idea of success needed serious recalibration. Emma, Sarah said finally, her voice small. I'm sorry. I know, I replied gently. But you don't need to be. The sincerity in that moment cut through years of rivalry and expectation, revealing the love that had always existed beneath. Will you stay? She asked. For the rest of the party. I looked around, the parents still processing 8 years of misunderstanding, the Worthingtons recalibrating their assessments, the photographer quietly documenting history. Of course, I said. But maybe we should take that family photo now. I have a feeling tonight's going to be talked about for a long time. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her all evening. Yeah. I think you're right. As the photographer prepared his equipment and the family gathered, the ballroom buzzed with conversations that had nothing to do with wedding planning. Instead, guests discussed cancer research, biotech innovation, and the mystery CEO who had been hiding in plain sight. The chandelier cast the same elegant light, but everything else had changed. Sarah's engagement party had become the night the family discovered that success comes in many forms, and sometimes the person you overlook is the one changing the world. In the photos taken that night, Sarah still looked radiant in her gown, the bride-to-be stepping into high society. But beside her, in a simple navy dress, stood her sister, the cancer researcher, the CEO, the woman on the Time cover, the one who had quietly revolutionized medicine while everyone else assumed she was just filing papers. The pictures captured a moment of transformation, when a family's understanding of achievement was permanently altered by 3 words on a magazine cover. The secretary was a scientist. The ordinary sister was extraordinary. Sarah's perfect evening had become something even better, the night her family learned that greatness doesn't always announce itself, and sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones you never saw coming. As the party carried on, phones buzzing with news alerts, I caught Sarah's eye across the photographer's camera. She was still processing, still adjusting to a reality where her little sister's achievements dwarfed the rest of the room. But for the first time in our lives, she looked at me with something new. Not pity. Not condescension. Respect. And maybe, just maybe, a little awe. The Time cover story would run for a week. But the story of Sarah's engagement party would last forever. The night their assumptions shattered, and the overlooked sister revealed herself as one of the most important scientists of her generation.